Assalamu alaikum and welcome to everyone. I'm Taras Radawat. I'm CEO of 786 Investments as well as president of Dawat Global Foundation, Ladies Fund and Educate a Girl. And it's my absolute privilege to welcome with us today Jahan Ara, who many of you know is quite the icon as the president of the Pakistan Software House Association for IT, PASHA. She has been spearheading PASHA for 16 years, and in 2015, they had the savvy to launch Nest IQ with Google entrepreneurs as an accelerator community space and technology incubator, which has proven to be quite successful and a very important part of the community here in Sindh. Next, we have Narmeen Khan, who is quite incredible in her own right, and is the MD of Mondelez Pakistan, which handles brands such as Bubbly, Marvelous Creations, CDM Oreo, Share Bags, and 5 Star. She is, of course, known also for Cadbury Dairy Milk and Tang, so she's without a doubt the sweetest member of our panel here today. Thank you for joining us, to both of you. And again, welcome to our audience, to T2F. Today's discussion and theme is about women entrepreneurs and professionals. And we have a wonderful combination here for you. And we'll be discussing things ranging from how businesses are built, the struggles, the learnings, the take-backs, and also have a very courant discussion on the realities of women rising in positions of power. As you know, more and more women are rising, not only in the world, but in Pakistan today. And how is that impacting both the economy, but also the culture here in Pakistan? And it does make us want to know from these amazing women what their vision, and I'll also, of course, share mine, of an ideal inclusive work culture. So with that backdrop, let's begin. So, Jahan Ara, would you like to share the story of how businesses are built from your journey, particularly the Nest? Everyone would love to hear how you put that together.
Thank you, Tara. It's amazing to be back at T2F, which is one of my most favorite places in the city. But unfortunately, I haven't been here in a while, so I'm glad that we're holding this event here today. So the Nest IO is something that I started 6 years ago, exactly 6 years completed on the 1st of January. And the whole idea was that I had been working in the startup space and in the technology space for many years. I moved back to Pakistan from Hong Kong in 1994. And together with actually Sabine and Zach, we started a company called Enabling Technologies, which developed a lot of really innovative products. And that was soon after starting Enabling Technologies, I joined PASHA as a member. And through my journey with PASHA, I realized that there were not many women who were part of the technology sector. In fact, there were no women who were CEOs of any IT companies in Pakistan at that time. That has changed. There are many more, but still not enough. There are still, I mean, you can still count them on the fingers of your hand. But there are many more women now who are part of the technology industry. But we need to see them rise through the ranks to director level, to management level, to CEO level. And that is something that we need to continue to struggle with. And that's something that I've been trying to do. At the same time, of course, the men in the tech industry also need support. So I started a lot of activities as part of PASHA, which were to recognize the innovation that was happening in the industry. The Nest IO was what I really feel passionate about, because I felt that the technology industry would not grow unless we had many more people starting companies. And that was the reason to start the Nest. There was nobody who was doing it at that time in Karachi. And so we set it up. And from that time onwards till now, we have had 200 startups actually graduate out of the Nest. Naturally, all of them were not going to succeed, and they didn't. but that's a part of the entrepreneurial journey. Failure is a part of the startup ecosystem. But many of them have succeeded. They have created jobs. They've contributed to the economy. They have created a lot of impact. And I'm very proud of them, because if we hadn't started the Nest, some of them may still have gone on to start businesses. But they would not have received the guidance, the mentoring. They would not have been able to meet other startup founders like themselves. And I think that is the amazing part of what the Nest is. It's a community. It's a community of people who support each other, who see each other through the difficult times, as well as celebrate when any of them do well. One of the things I want to say before Narmeen takes over is that when I started the Nest, in our first cohort, we only had one woman founder. And that really upset me, because I said, where are all the women? No woman applied for our first cohort except for that one. So then I went out. I went to the universities. I went to different meetings and conferences that were held, and I said, where are the women? And by the fourth cohort, we had 50% women founders. So I guess you have to go out there and tell women that, look, you can do this too. There is nothing that should hold you back. Nobody tells them. At university, most professors tell them that, you're only here temporarily, you'll get a degree, you won't contribute to the economy, you won't do anything. So they held back because of that attitude. And I think that needs to change, and it is changing.
Thank you so much, Jahan. As you know, many of us are aware that not only is the Nest a feeding ground for so many startups, but also you're more than the founder. You're also a mother hen, looking after everyone, and
the big bird.
The way everyone loves you is something that we all admire so much. Narmeen, would you share the story of your own career and how you got into this position?
Sure. No, thank you, and a big thank you to all of you for inviting me here. This is my first time here, and I'm really, really liking the place and the legacy that you guys just have discussed about. I started my journey, I guess, when you're growing up and you have a set of parents who encourage you, who tell you that you're no different from the son they have. I think that's where the whole career starts in a way. So I was brought up by two amazing parents who told me I was no different than my brother. They gave me equal opportunity to study and do whatever I wanted to do in life. And I think that paved the way for me I felt empowered my entire life that I could do what I put my mind to. I studied business. I started up with a couple of jobs. I didn't know where I wanted to go. But I never stopped to think that, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe, I should just get married, have kids, and raise a family. I think the important part while I was growing up is that I wanted to do something with my life. I wanted to have my own place and my own identity. And I think that led me in really putting out my best when I was working my entire career. I started off with Parktel, moved to a bank I was just telling you about, where I met my husband as well, and then onwards to Unilever and Cadbury. I've been with Cadbury for the last 16 years of my life, and that's when I was also raising my family as well as my career, nurturing my career as well. And it's not been easy. But I think with grit and determination, there's no stopping anyone. And I absolutely agree with Jahan Ara, is that once you've given that support mechanism, the determination, the confidence to say you can do whatever you want to, you can make it happen. And I think my husband's right here, sitting right here. He's been a tremendous support. At times, he's compromised on his career to let me shine. And I think that is equally important. We need to have a very great support system and a family that's there behind you all around. I got an opportunity to move outside in my organization. I spent 5 years in Dubai in a regional role. And when this position of managing director for Pakistan came up, to your surprise, nobody asked me. I actually had to raise my hand for it. And I told them, I can do it. Take a chance on me. And they said, really? We didn't think you would be up to it, or we didn't think you would be interested in doing it. And that just made me realize a lot of time, we all know we can do it, but just because we don't speak up, we don't raise our hands, people don't realize we are capable of taking those positions. But I guess the company put that trust behind me, and here I am. It's been 2 years with the organization, and it's been a phenomenal journey for us. My organization is growing strong, double-digit. We're a snacking company. I think in COVID, we've really benefited from a lot of in-home snacking that has taken place. But it's just, I think for me, my journey is all about when you've got the grit, you've got the determination, and a good support system, there's no stopping women in accomplishing whatever they put their mind to.
Thank you so much for that insight, Narmeen. I think the reason your business is in double digits is the amount I buy. So I think I alone have been snacking enough during lockdown. Also, Narmeen, you just said something so insightful, because I personally believe the number one reason women aren't always in positions of power is they don't ask to be. And it's incredible to me that a number of my friends, even some of my school friends, I would say, just go have an appointment with your boss and say, I want to be right up there, and if I'm not up there naturally, then groom me to be up there. But know that I'm serious about this. And not only do many women not think to raise their hand, a lot of bosses don't realize that the women subtly actually want those positions. So there's no subtlety in success, I feel. It's a big, bold journey. Well, now for my own story, in addition, so of course, I'm the first female CEO of a non-banking financial institution in Pakistan's history. So it was originally co-founded by Asian Development Bank as an asset management company, and it's been an incredible journey, both founding the company and then we converted to Sharia compliance. And my degrees in Sharia law and Sharia compliance, so that was the start of that. And then, of course, in my charitable work, Ladies Fund actually was originally a CSR project because of the success that we had, and the business was booming in those days. We were very blessed. And after the assassination of twice elected Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto, who had actually mentored me through my thesis on First Women Bank, we launched the first ever awards for women. And T2F, of course, was founded by Sabine Mahmood, who was one of our winners the first year, 2008, and is greatly missed to this day. Jahan Ara has partnered with us with Pasha for giving funding, and she's made a beautiful speech that we all remember to this day at our awards ceremony. And it's now in the 13th year of the awards, and that was just a dream to celebrate and recognize incredible Pakistani women. And Educate a Girl was founded in a very unusual way 5 years ago, because a voice would come to me constantly saying, educate girls, educate girls. And when I didn't know how or where to begin, we began with 16 girls at the start, and it suddenly grew, and now thousands and thousands, and with Facebook's Internet.org partnership and with training from WeMina and World Bank, over 1 million girls online. So that's been an incredible part of the journey. And just because I think it would be very interesting for our audience here today, Lean In Pakistan Foundation, which is an affiliate of Lean In Global, began simply because we started a Lean In circle of 200 women in Pakistan, and it was the first Lean In event to our knowledge in Asia, South Asia, MENA, SAARC, and it was featured on Sheryl Sandberg's, who's the COO of Facebook's personal Facebook page, and it was the first time she ever mentioned Pakistan on her page. And from that, I had the pleasure of meeting her, and we were so active. We were one of 10 affiliates out of 182 cities or countries around the world that was actually made into its own foundation, seeded by her. So it's been quite a journey. So one is for-profit, then there's the philanthropic initiatives, and now an affiliate. So life can form, you can form businesses in many, many different ways. But Jahan Ara, while you spoke about that nest journey, one thing that we have to address is the setbacks, the challenges, the learnings, and the takeaways from that.
So, like Narmeen, I had very supportive parents who told us early on, I have 3 brothers and 1 younger sister, told us that any of us could do whatever we wanted to do. And so there was never questioning whether I could go into this profession or that profession. It was, what are you passionate about? What are you good at? What can you learn? And then what can you achieve, and what kind of impact you can create? So it's been, I don't know, when very often when people ask me, what were your challenges? I really think I feel blessed that there weren't that many challenges. The biggest challenge I think many women face, and I face that myself as well, is questioning yourself and wondering whether you can do it. So a lack of confidence within yourself is something that you need to challenge all the time. Men don't do that. So that's why when people in large organizations or even small ones are looking at promotion or postings, men put up their hands right away, even if they are not capable of taking on that position. Whereas women start to think, maybe, I need to develop myself a little more before I go for this. So I think that is a challenge that we all face. I don't know whether I want to change that, because I really would like to be the best I am at what I do. So I would like to question myself, but I think we need to be out there saying, yes, let's take that on. Let's choose to challenge, which is what the tagline for International Women's Day is. Let's choose to challenge and see what we can do by going out there and learning how to do this rather than questioning whether we can do it. So I think that is a challenge that I feel that many of us face and that we need to continue to struggle with. When I moved back to Pakistan, I think one of the things I noticed, which I didn't notice in Hong Kong where I started my career, was that there it was quite natural for women and men to go out to work and bring up families and do everything that was required of them in the community. Here it was not that common at that time. So I'm talking about in the mid-90s. Especially in certain professions, if you went out, on a sales job or you went to raise money, that was not that easily done. It's still not easy to raise money, actually, but, but nonetheless, many professions have accepted the inclusion of women now, which wasn't true even 20 years ago. And that's good, but we need to continue to make that happen. In the technology sector, even now, there are only 15% women. But this is true globally. It's not just Pakistan. So I think we need to make sure that any companies that we create as women take into account that that flexibility that is required to make sure that women are able to juggle everything that they need to in their lives, they're able to do. So 9 to 5 doesn't work for women because they have families, they have school-going children, they have old parents to take care of, they have community responsibilities. So make it possible for them to have flexi time, make it possible so that they can do what they want to do from wherever they are. And this, now COVID has provided us with that opportunity where a lot of people are now working from home. So work from home has become much more acceptable than it was all these years. Although in places like Australia, it was always acceptable because they knew that people were in different parts of the country and they couldn't always come to work. So I think those are the kind of challenges we are conquering little by little, and I think we just need to continue to do that instead of becoming complacent.
Very wise words and a beautiful journey. One thing that's clear from COVID is not only that this work from home environment, we worked until March 1st from home, and the law has now changed and many of us are back in the office. What's been interesting is that when women and men both work from home, women excel in a whole different way, because a lot of the barriers to entry and the barriers to success for women have included transport, getting home in time, late sittings, and so forth, and all of that was neutralized. And then women with their natural reliability and resilience and ability to work anywhere and multitask. Also, a lot of men have struggled, especially in apartments with children around and other things, because they prefer a pure, crisp, focused work environment, whereas for women it was business as normal. And although some women felt, of course, like many people, that it was a bit overwhelming for their mental health, overall women were basically born for this. And so it's been quite an interesting journey that way. Narmeen, we know you're still working from home, so please share the realities of that with everyone. I'm sure everyone's dying to know.
No, it's very true. I think working from home has its benefits, and I think it's enabled women to perform much better. You're absolutely right. As you mentioned, commuting, late hours, of course it takes a stress. Men have been just doing one job at a time. I keep saying that, when they're at work, they're only focused at work, and when they come back, they believe, someone else is there to take care of them. I think that also has reversed in COVID, and I think what has also happened is they've gotten that reality check of what all women have been doing their entire lives. I've got a lot of colleagues, men who have struggled during this time working from home because they really can't handle it. And they've realized how much housework their wives have been taking care of. And they are now sharing equally in that workload. So that's amazing. And I think COVID has really opened up our eyes and given both men and women that opportunity to understand each other's lives better. And I think that will really help us in the future as well, because I think men and women need to be equal, taking care of the workloads, whether it's professional or personal or at home, or even with raising kids. So I think COVID has really helped that. I think men struggled in the earlier months or so, but I think people have settled down well. And of course, I think COVID has been a catalyst in helping us have work from home, flexibility, flexi hours. You can work from anywhere, any time for that matter. It doesn't have to be a regimented 9-to-5 job. You can do your work during the day and still have, as long as the work is completed. As long as the work is done well, I think that's what's really important. So I think it's been a great journey for all of us, and I hope that we learn from this and we continue to improve our lives as a family unit, as an organization, as a society as a whole, because there are always two people. The two wheels or the four, as they say, on every car. So we have to do it together. And this is the best time for us to understand each other and take that journey forward in the best possible way.
Very true. And Narmeen, would you also share some insight in the difficulties and challenges of your own journey and your takeaways from that?
To be very honest, I think I'll build on what Jahana said. I think I've been very privileged and blessed to have a supportive family. I didn't feel that getting my education or getting a job was such a hard thing for me. I think I was very blessed there. I think the obstacles I faced was definitely when you're at a certain age where you're supposed to get married, have a family, raise a family while continuing your professional life. I think that balancing act is really tough on women. Sleepless nights and you still have to report to work because your kid was up the whole night. Of course, these are realities that women have to go through. And again, you need a really supportive household and a husband who's there for you, encouraging you all the way. And I think for me, that was the toughest part. And at that point, to be very honest, I think I also let my career sort of be a more stabilizing factor rather than really being ambitious of saying I need to go there and I need to do that. I think I took my time, I paced it out. A lot of my batchmates probably went ahead in my career, in their careers respectively, but that didn't bother me. For me, my family life or raising a family was a priority then. But as soon as my kids were independent, I think there's been no stopping me. I moved abroad. I really put my, my level best in getting, as I said, raising my hand and making sure, whatever opportunities were there. But I think what, again, I'll try to emphasize on is that we women know we can do it at times. The lack of confidence just pushes us back and saying, am I ready? Am I not ready? When I took up this managing director job, it has a lot of sales aspect to it. I've been a brand manager and a marketer my entire life. I didn't know sales, but I said, I'm going to learn. I can learn. I knew I could do it. And that's it. That's the trust I actually shared with my organization, as well as saying, no, I'm going to take a chance. I'm going to move out of my comfort zone, and I know I can do it. Take a chance on me. And I learned. I think the first year in this role, I think was probably the toughest. My family was still in Dubai, but they gave an opportunity to come back, understand the brands, understand the market, understand the teams. And I really put probably, the balance at that time was more work than family, but I was okay because my family was abroad, so I could really spare that time. But we have to learn. I think this journey is all about continuous learning and continuous improvement. So whenever we feel we know enough, I think that's where the challenge is. That's where the obstacle is. That's where the barrier is. And again, have the confidence, have the faith in yourself, and there's not going to be stopping anyone.
Thank you so much for those words of wisdom. I think my journey's been slightly different from you two, because although I've been blessed with an amazing parental support system and education by the grace of God, I actually face obstacles every single day. And they're not internal as much, because I'm the person who, whenever they have a question, I'm the first to raise their hands. So when Facebook's Free Basics, Internet.org's Free Basics said, can anyone do their project in Russian? I raised my hand, the first in the whole world, and then went to the Russian consulate and said, help me translate all these modules to Russian. And they did. So I don't quite hesitate to raise my hand, though I know most women do have confidence and so forth that they have to overcome. But definitely not only do I raise my hand, I encourage anyone in my life to raise their hands quickly. And in fact, the speed at which they raise their hands, I kind of say, is now your turn for success. But in my own life and work, there's every day a challenge. Like every single day, there's a new disappointment and a new challenge. And then every once in a while, there's a triumph. So for me, it's about the thickness of my skin, which is getting thicker every day thanks to meeting Narmeen and all these Cadbury chocolates. Every time I see her, I get a craving and then go shopping and keep her in double digits. But thickness of skin, as well as an inner knowing. So for me, instead of the inner doubt, which I know everyone faces, there's an inner knowing that this is my destiny. And that keeps me going as well, because there's constant trials, there's constant difficulties, and many people think my ideas are crazy, and then many people are now starting to find them cool, but it took some time. So from that point of view, it's been a very interesting journey. But I'll share one particular story from my for-profit work, my asset management company. When I started, being the first female, I actually tried to run the company like a 60-year-old or 50-year-old white man. And because it was a financial institution, I would study and, watch how, Jack Welch's theories or the theories of the people who I admired, or, the business school icons. And was horrible at it. So my first year, it was like trying to be something I wasn't, but aspire to be, and really, really failed at that. And then the minute I said, okay, I'm going to do it my own way, we became #1 in our performance. And it was so incredible that when I stopped trying so hard to do what I thought I should do, and I just started doing what was natural and came to me and was easier for me, we excelled. So my biggest takeaway is the more I believe in myself, which echoes what both of you have said, but not in my ability to do things, but in my ability to do things my way, even if it's different than the ways of others, is to me the greatest takeaway I've had throughout this journey and continue to continually have. So now we have you, Jahan Ara, to solve the entire big question for today, which is, what does it mean for Pakistan that now women are rising and rising in power? And it's happening. Even if we didn't have International Women's Day today, it's a reality. And COVID has only made it more of a reality as women have found their place and space in this culture. What does it mean for those businesses? What does it mean for society? What does it mean for our culture? And also, if you could share a little bit about your own ideal inclusive work culture, which I personally think NetOI is a complete exemplary environment that I wish we could clone.
So Tara, I think one of the most important things that a country like Pakistan needs to remember is you have 50% of the population inactive economically. And that's a mistake, right? So that's changed, and there are many more women who are now doing phenomenal work. And even in government, you see people like Dr. Sania Nishtar, you see people like Roshni Zafar, you see lots of women who are doing great work and being recognized for it. But still not enough. I still think that a lot more needs to be done. Even now, when we go into many meetings or go into rooms, you will see that they're predominantly full of men who are talking about golf and talking about things that, may not interest us, okay? Women also play golf, but many women in Pakistan do not. So they exclude us without intentionally meaning to, and that makes us uncomfortable. What makes me uncomfortable, I try and counter that by changing the conversation. And you can do that. Start a conversation that is inclusive so that nobody feels uncomfortable. And I think that is important for both men and women to remember, that it is not a good thing to make anyone uncomfortable. So inclusivity, I think a lot of companies have begun to realize that if they're going to do well, they need to be inclusive and diverse. And that just doesn't mean just women. It means people from different classes, people from, people of different age groups, people of different religions, people of different knowledge bases. You are only going to create a diverse culture if you employ people who disagree with each other. If all of them are the same, you're not going to grow. And I think, Zarmeen, you must know that, otherwise you wouldn't be running a company and running it with double-digit growth. So that is something I think companies have begun to realize, and that's why more women are being employed, more people of diverse backgrounds are being employed. These are smart management decisions being made by people in organizations. And new organizations are learning this as well. So I think things are changing, but it will take time, and we will need to keep pushing to make it happen. As far as the Nest.io is concerned, the Nest was set up as an inclusive space. And I made sure at every stage that this, you can't automatically expect it to happen. Like I said, there was only one woman founder in the beginning, and then we made sure it was 50% women. We held activities that encouraged women to come out, tell us why it was that they were not comfortable being part of different programs, learning from them, because each one, even if we are women, each one of us is different. Each one needs something different in their lives for growth, for, whether it's in professional growth or growth of them as people. And you need to learn what it is they need before you can deliver a program that is good for them. And that's what we've tried to do at the Nest.io. My team, although I'm told that this is also unfair because I have a team of 10 people, out of which 9 are women, and I swear, it's not because I went out and said I'm going to hire women. They were the best people for the job. So if they are the best people, why should I not hire women just to keep a balance of 5 men and 5 women? So it's been a great journey, and I think it has taught the founders who've been part of our journey the respect that they owe each other. Many of them come from families where there's no interaction between young men and young women. I don't know, why do they think that they're a different species, right? And so they're not comfortable. They go to, some of them have gone to schools and colleges which are purely for men or purely for women, and then they just don't understand each other, don't understand how to deal with each other. But when they come into the Nest, they are taught, this is a place where everyone deserves the same amount of respect. And I think that is what has made the Nest a place where women have felt comfortable coming in, spending a lot of time, spending weekends, bringing their children with them when they needed to. We've made sure that we allowed for that to happen, because sometimes women with small children are denied opportunities simply because spaces are not open to letting them bring small kids with them. So the Nest, I am very proud to say that my team, as well as the founders who've been part of the space, understand that. And that's what we need to expand to all of Pakistan, really.
Thank you so much, Jahanara, for that. What was very interesting was your comment. All of it was, of course, interesting. But when you talked about the different species, because one of the things we've been wanting to do is hold succession planning seminars for fathers and daughters. And there's not been quite a space where fathers are alone with their daughters much. And so as we were talking to different groups of companies and so forth, they were hesitating if their male senior management, male CEOs would be comfortable, coming to a talk just with their young daughters, especially if they're not already working in the businesses. And so that's one of the projects that usually each idea comes, but it doesn't come to fruition immediately. But it never occurred to me, as someone who is close to both my parents and always had a freedom of dialogue with both my parents, that it's very embedded in our culture that fathers do not actually spend that much time alone, and certainly not in public, with their daughters, historically at least. Would you care to add a little bit about your vision for an inclusive work culture, as well as your thoughts on what's happening with more and more MDs, CEOs, and presidents of companies, as well as more women in the workforce, Nurmi? Thanks.
Well, thanks, Tara. I think to me, diversity and inclusion basically means appreciating that all of us are unique. And also to recognize the different perspectives, the different opinions that each of us bring to the table. And for us to be heard, and for each of that perspective, opinion, to be given that value of really understanding where it's coming from. To me, a diverse and an inclusive workplace is all about a place where people can be comfortable with who they are, and they can behave and really bring their true self. Literally, their behavior is what they're all about. And a workplace where we respect and we treat each other with integrity and justice. I think fairness is the most important aspect that we need to create in the workforce. And I think a lot is happening today. Of course, we are not where we want to be, but I think the journey has already started. And with more and more female MDs and female leaders coming up, I'm very happy to say I think nearly 45 or 50% of my local leadership is comprised of women leaders, is also, I think the ownership now rests with us, because we need to enable more women to stay in the workforce as well. I think we get a lot of management trainees, we get a lot of initial ABMs and assistant managers coming in, but when we look at the pipeline, the funnel just gets smaller and smaller as we go up the ladder. And the reason is because a lot of them want to stay in the workforce, but they're not able to, whether if the organization was not equipped to handle diversity or to handle flexibility for the female, or there are things that are happening at the home or in the society or in the community where women sometimes have to drop out. So I feel as female leaders, as female MDs, we need to make sure our organization, our businesses are equipped to help the women on their journey so that they can stay on. Even if they get married, even if they have a family, we give them those opportunities of working from home, of having flexi hours, of having maternity leave, and not fear that if I come back, my job will not be there. So I think it's a two-way street. We need to look out for them, and they need to stay on, be determined that they really want to accomplish what they accomplish in life. And I think it's going to get better as we continue to support each other. And I think a lot more men and a lot more women need to support each other in this journey. We all cannot do it alone. Men can't do it on their own. Women can't do it on their own. We have to realize we both genders need each other. In order to continue on this journey. And I think we are on a very good path, and I hope my next generation is able to see a better, more inclusive, and more diverse world.
Very true, and we know you have 2 daughters.
Yes.
And so that's very, very important for their future. One of the things we've been doing a lot at Ladies Fund is advocacy for this. And we're very proud that the State Bank's new policy is by 2023. There'll be 20% inclusion of women in the financial sector, and we expect SECP to announce it soon thereafter. And this is something very close to our heart that we've been working on. And further to that, in my own asset management company, we have 3 women directors rather than the required 1, including a female chairperson, and 2 of them have been former bank presidents. So it's not just having a token woman, but incredibly qualified women. And on the other boards I serve, so far I'm the only woman, but I feel it's important to, wherever you go, to bring others with you. And it's the first, but certainly not the last. And so it's been quite a journey working on advocacy for increasing women on boards, and of course this amazing advocacy of women employment in that sector. And in the work for that advocacy, we had researched all the countries in the world, and particularly the region. And Pakistan is taking the lead in these policies. And so I'm really, really proud of our nation and the men at the helm of the finance ministry who have supported this stream. And so commend them tremendously for that. One of the other initiatives we're working on right now is we've been collaborating with the State Bank of Pakistan on giving loans of up to $5 million for any woman for her business. And we nominated 10 days ago, and I've been working on more and more, as well as Share Your Options, as well as with partnership with eFiler to help women businesses register. How is that relevant to, that's showing the landscape, because even how powerful we see examples of women working and women in leadership now, it is going to be a steeper slope in the future. And these kind of policies are setting a pace of acceleration of women in these positions. And so it's not only there, but it's growing and growing fast. And we already have been aware that many men are struggling to get into universities, and especially on the honor roll. So there could be shifts, not just globally, but in Pakistan on that landscape, but that's a whole different discussion, perhaps not for International Women's Day. And my vision of an inclusive work culture is one that echoes what Jahan Ara had said about not just diversity meaning women, but diversity meaning diversity of thought, and that could be culture, religion, persuasion, even handy-capable ages. Ages, I think very much boards would benefit from people of different age. And not only is resilience something that comes from diversity, but the reality is people are living longer. So the forced retirement ages of the past are leaving a workforce that is able-bodied, of very sound mental prowess, and eager to contribute and hungry to continue their life's work, not allowed in their original spaces. And when they go on to start their own businesses at retirement age, those businesses are flourishing. And simultaneously, you have millennials, or now iGen, coming up in their 20s with businesses that are cutting edge and flourishing. So there's no one way of how the future is going to look, because these things are happening concurrently. And it's quite exciting. And it all goes to a feeling of everyone being able to optimize their dreams, their lives, so forth, which I think ultimately is what we're striving for. So my vision of an ideal inclusive work culture is one that's resilient, open, and one that embraces diversity as its greatest strength. And in addition to echoing what Jahan Ara has said, I want to echo what Narmeen said, is working and creating the story together. Businesses have to listen to their diverse employees, and the diverse employees have to speak and communicate their mind, because businesses cannot be held to blame if they cannot read minds. So there has to be both working together. And so on that note, we have completed all the questions we wanted to discuss today on our own. I think that while we're sitting here in a moment of showcasing success, which is what we're proud and humbled to showcase today, I think it's also important to address the number of women watching today who may be in a position of struggle, who may be overwhelmed at times of COVID, who may have lost loved ones, and who may not be at the peak at this moment. And so I thought my last words would be to salute you for being you, and knowing that it's not only about success. Life is a series of ups and downs, and I hope for each and every person, both here and watching, that you'll have a moment on stage to speak about your own successes or triumphs or life. But even if you don't, what you do in life is equally beautiful, and we celebrate each and every woman today, wherever they are in their journey, whatever they accomplish or don't accomplish according to some paper, because each of you is somebody special and someone I know that we're open and accessible to meet. And on that note, I think on all our behalves, I'd like to wish everyone a happy International Women's Day and thank T2F for thinking of us and inviting us and giving us the honor to address you today. And continue to believe in your dreams. Thank you.